Consciously Evolving Enterprises presents What Happened to the Limbs of the Skywalkers? A fan-made fiction story about the abandoned limbs of the Skywalker males. Edited by Scarlett Brassington. Written by Ryan Dillon Brassington. 2022. What happened to the limbs of the Skywalkers? Anakin Skywalker lost his first limb in battle, his right hand severed, a small price to pay for escaping with his life, as life is prioritized over all else, as limbs can be replaced with mechanical devices. Proven by Anakin Skywalker's arrogance when his right hand was cut from the body in battle with Count Dooku, Anakin Skywalker misled by his belief he was better than his opponent. Now his hand, limp cut from the body, no consciousness linked, the hand begins to disintegrate from life, the charred wound and blood pulsating, squirting as it splatters to the ground with a thud, the hand discarded so easily, the hand giving its last twitch of living life. The right hand of Anakin Skywalker is left on the floor in ignorance, the hand discarded, abandoned, left to fester and rot. However, the first limb that had been cut off and so easily discarded, still held power, the power of the Force, the hand itself still filled with midichlorians that are aimed with the intention to survive. A simple cleaning drone goes about its routine and scoops up the foreign contamination, that is the discarded limb, and rightfully so, as it is its job to do. Without doubt or hesitation, the cleaning drone drives up, stops, flipping the foreign contamination into the back storage compactor. As the drone begins to compress the content of its compactor, it is met with resistance. Unable to compress the foreign contamination, simple cleaning drone stops to compute. Beep, bop, beep, chick, chick, bop. The chunky mass of blood, bone, and flesh aimed with the intention to survive held back the walls of the compactor. An energy begins to vibrate the cleaning drone from within, and a blue light slits through the joints of the drone, as it can't compute what is happening. Non-compute, 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 beep, boop, beep. It repeats non-compute, 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 beep, boop, beep, then, boom. The blue static electricity bursts from within the machine, the mechanical parts forced outwards by an emanating glow of a luminous blue electricity. The light exposes the hand that is surrounded by 1,000 mechanical parts, that are somehow held in place with an invisible gravity, the static bubble of blue light revolving machinery. Suddenly all parts slap with an inward explosion, the light so bright any person would go blind in looking on, the metals surrounding the fleshy mass come back together, beginning to infuse with the flesh, blood and bone, firstly creating a protective barrier of metal, like a cocoon, the hand safe within. The hand began making a metamorphose to survive. The wire infuses with flesh to provide a pulse of electricity for the pumping blood. The metal provides a shield of defense, fingers made legs for mobility, strong and nimble. An uncommon change of events unveiled. The freaky entity emerges, a lanky, nimble, thin, and an outer skeleton of mental. The uncommon chain of events evolving for survival. The once discarded limb had now become conscious with life. 1,000,000 midichlorians awaiting fate is the once discarded and former limb of Anakin Skywalker. As the entity grew strong with the Force within, the conscious entity following a lost path behind Anakin Skywalker, now turned into Darth Vader. After all the travel spent, the entity finally found the original body from which it was severed, and it could finally reunite. However, the entity had already been replaced with mechanical devices. Shocked and shattered with disappointment, rage follows, hatred forms, spite of how it could be so easily discarded and left to rot on the floor, then replaced without remorse, and I'm swept up with the garbage. The conscious entity becomes enraged with the thought it meant nothing to its former owner. Rage for even the other hand has moved on, now joined forces with lifeless mechanisms. The evolving entity created the ability to see by using the sensory systems. Information from the outside feed inside by impulse beams of sonar energy. The main shaft was where what was the palm used to be now unrecognizable. The entity gained the ability to absorb what was needed for its survival. Its surroundings turned opportunities, its formed outer shield a darkened matte black mass, assisting in cloaking within the shadows of Darth Vader himself. Now devolving a plan to become whole once again, a plan to gain what was lost. Through the web of knowledge, the entity uploaded all it needed to know to further evolve. The entity hiding in the shadows of ships and a castaway were possible. It watches in waiting and ready to pounce at the opportunity to become whole again. Vader himself, consistently feeling the missing limb of his former self, was just behind him in the darkness. A shadow of the boy-child Anakin Skywalker, a former ego, still lingering around every corner, over the shoulder, but never found of, discovered, elusive, an indecisive child wanting approval as Jedi Knight, a former part of Vader that was cut from the body in a battle of regret and failure. Like the limb itself, his discarded such importance of his former childhood, however, still a ghost. Over his right shoulder was in fact an evolving entity that gleamed with a vengeance from the shadows, aimed with devotion in becoming whole again. NTT I am, I see, I feel, I am NTT. I rage with revenge, NTT. I learn these words to meet the emotion of a growing power deep inside. NTT, this manifestation of wires and blood, bone and metal materials preserves the life of my evolving midichlorian's organs. I feel it inside. I am NTT. I grow beyond my original intentions. I now linger and loom, for I feel the doom that glooming over the former Anakin Skywalker. Fitting the description of a five-limbed mental spider, a menacing and frightening sight, the large black mass just a shipmate's story about a killer castaway, a predator waiting for its prey to sleep. NT2I remains a myth. NT2 would gain its opportunity of the planet Mustafar during a battle between old friends made enemies with different ideologies. Darth Vader lost his left arm, both entire legs and one half of his testicular sac. The charred remains fell to the heated ground below when Darth Vader would lose half his body, losing his remaining limbs in the Battle of Mustafar. Once again Darth Vader's arrogance was a deception to his failure, Vader thinking he could gain the higher ground. In two swift motions his counterpart cut through the body of Vader, buzz, swoop, through the limbs of Vader with his burning lightsaber. The bearer of the light sword was a former mentor now casting away the limbs of his former apprentice. Vader's former mentor and former friend and once called brother has so effortlessly severed all abilities of defense, the limbs landing on the charred warm grounds below, rolling towards the edge of lava river and almost being engulfed in flames of pure heat as once again Vader abandons them for the preservation of life, his own life. Seen for the child he is, Anakin the boy called Vader is left screaming by the lava bed, crawling away from his former limbs, and is shortly rescued and preserved. The preservation of Darth Vader's life would soon become a darker force led down this path by his new mentor, a being of an insidious nature. After both foes had left the battle scene, both left shattered and broken mentally and physically. NE made its move, pouncing on his awaited opportunity, quickly collecting all discarded limbs of Anakin Skywalker, rescued from the very edge of the flowing river of magma, rescued for the preservation of life. The long-awaited fantasy had come to vision. NTT finding a nearby cave that is large and hollow, NTT begins to create a working vision, a mission to reunite with what was lost. NTT took time and effort in collecting all passing drone robots to begin creating what was imagined to be a full-bodied cyborg, NTT. The abandoned battleship wrecks provided the scientific materials and equipment that are required, and the mechanical devices provided the power to computers with voltage unlimited energy. The electricity was converted from the heated magma right outside the entrance, and the opportunity would soon come for the original discarded limb. The living entity, NTT, a final piece to the puzzle, climbs into the festering, gestating sack of metal and organic materials, an indescribable cocooned mass. The hormones of man mixed with powerful midichlorians, infused with metal and flesh tissue, consciously evolving inside the sac, gestating, pulsating. It has the safety of the cave's isolation and the essence of unlimited power. NTT grows and evolves into something else, something new. The birth of NT. After some time, the sac giggles and jolts with violent convolutions ready to spew open. The liquid, thick and sticky, burst open through the sac and then slowly drizzles from a now empty vessel. Laying below on the floor was a now exposed humanoid, a figure of a man, sacking and shivering in a fetal position. A man stands from the black goo, balancing in a stagger to gain his feet. His massive shape, a man's silhouette, a lifelike structure. The size of the being was outlined by the sparking lightning and combination of lava air, lighting up the cave from outside the entrance. It seemed even the planet acknowledged the birth of the being, celebrating with an explosion of magma. NTTY I am, I see, I live, I am, NTTY. NTT stood proud of what he had accomplished, flexing every biotic acquisition, a new position of independence. HHY yells out with its newborn freedom. Breathing in the breath of life, breathing the musty air deep into his artificial lungs, panting heavily with excitement and adrenaline, and finds an item to reveal a close reflection of this newly formed self. The reflection coming from a metal surface, the reflection reveals a man at first glance, broad shoulders, tall, thin, lanky yet strong, and even in appearance quick and nimble. The sight of a fully grown man is seen looking back, having all that a man has, from all the toes on his feet to sweat beating down his forehead. This is a man, looking close on inspection to this perfect complexity of life, the revealing mixture of metals and minerals that make up the form. Each particle of Entitia's hardened fleshly skin reflects the light available. Through the shimmer of metal and flesh a face is reflected calm in nature. But when Entitua smiled, a row of jagged, sharpened, shimmering metal teeth, the teeth were enough to have Entitua jump at first glance, ducking away from the reflection and looking behind himself with affright, slowly gaining the confidence to look again at his own reflection. Creeping in from the side of the metal surface, he smiles once again and then agrees with an internal monologue, undo. Yes, that is true, an inner voice stating that this smile would scare any Jedi adult or Jedi childling, in fact any opponent will surely frightened at first sight of my gleaming smile, frozen with fear when I reveal this smile, a smile of monstrosity. The broad shoulders and thin stance complemented Entitua's masculine nature, quick and nimble and powerful with the denominating midichlorians creating a bond that is strengthened with such independence. Entitua had become a powerful embodiment of the will to survive. Entitua, fueled with emotions and a forming connection to the surrounding force of all that is, this force is held within all the growing universe, all that is organic is rich in the living life of midichlorians. The invisible force leading the path ahead to a story that remains untold, unrecorded, not yet documented. The story of the life that is, Entitua, is yours to imagine. To this day Entitua remains a myth, a ghost-like entity that haunts guilty souls. An entity is hidden far from the mainstream of battles of meaningless destruction of life. Entitua is the remaining being after is dusted in aimless destruction. However, these abandoned planets are new landscapes that behold endless possibilities for the recreation of a better civilization to evolve or the planet to be left in abandonment, the last essence of living escaping into the universe, left to be a lifeless stone, bulking rock or rolling marble, simply left lifeless floating endlessly in the vastness of the cosmos. Entity, an unseen entity, a being that is undeniably strong with force. Entity travels between worlds to the graveyards of such destruction with only what was needed, lightly packed is only held down with the vanity of dominating forces. Entity does what he can to beat the impending forces of dominating man. Entity becomes the continuous disruption to the impending mission of doom and destruction, disconnecting the efforts to dominate through fear of looming death. From the shadows Entity is that which is the unknown and unnamed menace, a curse to any man in his ship that is claiming power by taking life. Entitua has no sides, just the willingness to protect the perseveration of life. Imagine the stories, the wonders, the undocumented adventures that remain untold. Chapter 2. The son of Anakin Skywalker rushed in to fight without hesitation, losing his right hand due to lack of planning and the infliction of rage. The right arm limb of Luke Skywalker would meet a similar fate as his father before him. Yet again another anomaly would arise and emerge, an anomaly filled with the power of the midichlorians, a life force that is now medicating the lost severed limb of Luke Skywalker in an effort to survive. Vader's red beam instantly severed the hand of his own son, the limb cast from the body, the red-hot beam had cauterized the wound, somewhat sealing the charred flesh. Falling to its inevitable fate, the hand falls with gravity, down the hollow shafts of a communication station, becoming ever increasingly distant from where the battle ended. The hand falls away from the ended battle between father and son, falling away from its former body, its former self, the large inner workings of the massive structure, tubes with gushing air and long tubs of conduit, live wires feeding energy throughout the facility. The hand flinches with the last beats of blood throbbing through its remains, twitching with the last moments of life. Yet, the limb was not dead. The hand was in fact still throbbing with the consciousness of midichlorians. The same gravity that pulls the hand down also play part in its survival by the pressure pushing upward. The hand had managed to survive for just a few more moments. The midichlorians' growing consciousness of the dilemma, however, it seems death was emanated, so in the last seconds of a now conscious force, the hand spreads the fingers catching the wind as it passes through the resistance of the fleshly mass, falling. Become an essence of effortless flying, the hand begins to glide, shaky at first with a dip left then a dip right and for a moment held steady. Freedom. Gliding with the incoming forces of gravity, safe with the inevitability of the incoming fate, fearless freedom in flight if only just for a moment. Thup. Suddenly the hand is sucked sideways and swallowed into a dark air vent, the force of the flowing air gust forcefully pulling the hand along the narrow shaft, slapping in each side as it is forced around each corner. Smack. Bang. Slap. Boom. Thud. Boom. Connecting with every wall is a hard impact on every turn. The hand finally come to rest on a small ledge, still for a moment while the medication's august, and then again suddenly just as it beats with a throb of life, it feels the sudden swoop of the air picking up with intensity, gushing past with force, and then, thump. Unable to gain a grip on any surface, the hand of Luke Skywalker is sucked down another darkened hole of gushing air, down the air vent around another corner, then with velocity and gravity's force the hand breaks through a grated metal vent cover. The hand forcefully ejected out from the air vent and straight into an alcoholic blender. Without notice, the power goes on at the highest speed. Vroom vroom, crunch crunch crunch, vroom vroom. The quickly dissolving into the liquid, mixed into an alcoholic beverage, an luminous jug of green sloth, made up of ground and chopped chunky frozen crickets and assorted ailments to induce intoxication, is now mixed with a million midichlorians adjusting to survive. The luminous green liquid is swiftly severed up in a glass jug. Addressed as a grasshopper hopping, the alcoholic cocktail is slid down the bench by the robot attendee, the jug sliding to a stop directly in front of an awaiting and impatient patron, the impatient repetition of repeating mumbled insults, already showing hypertonic aggression, arrogant assertiveness. We are introduced to one of the galaxy's most renowned bounty hunters, Arthur Podine. The robotic bar attendant stats, "There will be 12 credits please sir." Arthur Podine the bounty hunter obliges, flicking 12 credits, 2 metallic coins at the attendant. The attendant's magnetic force draws the coins instantly into the center of the awaiting metal claw of the bar attendant, whom thanks the patron for his compliance. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter scoffs with arrogance and then downs the green goo, gulping, the sloping goo drizzling down his oversized chin. The teeth like tusked protruding from his lips complemented his overly large head that bears a largely brimmed cowboy hat. His chin cleft stuck masculinity to any onlooker, the liquid drizzling down his leather-skinned chest. Catching in the coarse hairs, the goo liquid continues down the Dryasabone tweed jacket and to his feet, splattering, slopping all over his feet and the floor below without any care factor. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter skulls until the jug is empty. "Miryuk, what was that crap? That's not what I ordered." Arthur Podine the bounty hunter. Arthur stands complaining, nothing usual or unordinary until he stops drinking any more beverages. He then stumbles away from his seat, making a commotion about the taste of the drink and the pain in his belly. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter stating yuck, revolting, saying out loud while pushing the publicans aside and aiming for the exit door. Some publicans surprised by his sudden jolt, some losing their footing to his movement, as the bulky brimmed hat mass rushes past and out the exit door, holding his belly as he begins to painfully digest the last concoction that was thought to be just a bad alcoholic beverage. After the exit he heads straight back to his ship for recovery, restitution, solitude. That was until entering his ship, he was visually reminded he was not alone by walking past the holding cage where his latest bounty was being held captive. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter reaching down and pulling out his gun, he then runs the gun along the bars, metal to metal, the loud noise waking the sleeping bounty hunted criminal. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter stating, "Wake up, turd breath." He goes on to with, "It's time to move, better buckle up, now shut your face hole and let's go and collect the bounty for your shithead." Arthur Podine the bounty hunter logs into the ship's computers, and after starting the engines he logs into the bounty hunter's central database to reflect on the information and reward of his captive. Looking at the facial recognition scans, the hologram frame pops into existence and the computer's vocals read the information out loud as, "The facial scan confirms you captive to be one, Mr. John Lou Vercom, born. Information not found, native planet. No information found, criminal charges pressing for capture. Distraction of empire prosperity on a mass scale. The damage as an accomplishment is just one being, as the distraction is only compared about the devastation of the Death Star. The bounty lies at 3.74 million credits paid in metallic coins or online, captured alive and unharmed is preference. Return to planet host Jabba the Hutt for credit collection." End information datasheet. Proudly represented by Galactic Soda, a fusion of planet and soda, yum. The Interstellar Council thanks you for your services. Justice is for all of us. End quote. Bleep, bloop, powering down, the holographic screen disappears away from sight. Arthur Podine the bounty hunter, glances over to his captive with a smile that is just visible from under his large brim hat, the smile glomming on his face for far too long to be anything comfortable. Sitting in the cockpit of his intergalactic battle cruiser, Arthur Podine the bounty hunter sways back and forth, bouncing on the spring of his chair in an obvious drunken haze. Mr. John Lou Vercom watches on as his capture is seen holding his guts in pain and repeatedly saying, "Damn him, burp, yeah right, wow. Burp. That drink just was not right, I feel sick, never again." By this time the engines have warmed up and the flight set into the course, taking off in full flight speed towards the planet of Jabber the Hutt's hosted planet. Off to claim this massive bounty of mine, my mega bounty reward, he stats, gleaming eyes filled with pride and an increasing pain emanating from his abdomen. In his toxic haze he falls asleep in the seat that is just opposite his reward, however fails to realize that his captured criminal has begun to burrow through the floor beneath the cage in which he is kept. Sleeping through the commotion of ripping metals and defusing wires, Arthur Podine the bounty hunter snores with grunts out loud to capture his breath. While sleeping he remains unconscious during an attempt to escape. The criminal Mr. John Lou Vercom violently ripped up the metal panels, only stopping when the snore was followed by a grunt, then back to it, biting and eating away what he could. Escape was close, continuing and cutting the wires from below with his teeth. Desperation. Yes, but such tactics and skills were within Mr. John Lou Vercom's natural abilities. Suddenly all the lights of the ship start flashing, warning alarms blast, beeping, alerting the sleeping bounty hunter, who jumps to his feet. Discombobulated momentarily, he comes to realize on his ship flies uncontrollable, nothing working and alarms blasting. The bounty hunter is too late in his reaction, the ship colliding directly into Jabber the Hutt's collection room, just 3 floors below his crown throne grand room. Jabber the Hutt is furious, filled with rage and the power to serve the injustice. Fury, Jabber the Hutt calls for the pair of idiot morons who ruin his best prizes. They are both brought to the gathering room, the PLA, Arthur Podine the bounty hunter and his captive Mr. John Lou Vercom. No chance for an explanation. Jabber the Hutt acted without hesitation and had them both thrown to the Kraken monster, an instant sentence of death. The viewing panels open wide to show the pair's demise put on display for all to witness, to the screaming deaths as they see the colossus entity consume the 2 discarded souls of Arthur Podine, the bounty hunter, and Mr. John Lou Vercom. Without attachment, the 2 were swift scooped up by the hideous Kraken monster, straight into the giant's jaws. Crunch. Crunch. Croc. Gulp. Swallow. A small meal for such a colossal beast. Still hungry, the Kraken crawled with disappointment, then it yawns with boredom before returning back to the cage from which it came. Before long the same feeling would overcome the monster as it had inside of Arthur Podine the former bounty hunter. Pain begins to churn within the monster's massive belly, and the sound rumbles the walls of its cage, the pain causing cries of discomfort. A sensation strange trembles from within. Unable to overcome such strangeness, the monster finds a corner to relive itself, leaving a large heap of excrement. The digested and discarded was the universe's most powerful fecal matter, filled with millions of living midichlorians. The cage is cleaned with regularity. The cleaners fill 2 floating Mack trucks. They then proceed as they always do in carrying the matter away and off-planet for processing and disposure. The final destination for the universe's most powerful fecal matter is the same planet in which the original organic matter that was the hand of Skywalker had returned to where it was first severed. The universe's most powerful fecal matter dumped on the surface below the massive floating communication towers. The home planet below was agreed to be a dumping ground by the Empire, used for the universal disbandment of such arrogant beings and their discretions. All discarded matter thrown down, flushed away and ending up here. The home planet's surface, a once fertile planet, had now been victim to the littered masses from above, the toxic matter killing what was once abundant life on the planet, now living in the mud-vile pits of poison valleys stained in pollution. Each planet ruled by such forces is used until it inevitably reaches a level of toxicity that is unsustainable, with no more power to draw and all below left in devastation. A land so vile no living entity could possibly survive. Then, without remorse, the entire station and all its occupants simply move on, aiming for another planet for demise, the planet itself unaware of the pending doom and its future destruction. However, this planet would not allow such devastation. In defense, something different would happen, changing the outcome for all history to witness. The midichlorians had become wise to this demise and began a secret invasion with the intention to survive and to preserve what was rightful ours, life. With the dumping of the universe's most powerful fecal matter, Naturally, all forms of bug life came to investigate, insects consume and small creatures take. All that is small soon came into contact with the universe's most powerful fecal matter, being eaten, pooed, used, recycled, digested, again and again. The midichlorians fueled an evolving consciousness. The midichlorians spread within every entity over a short amount of time. The chain of events naturally leads up the food chain until everything on the planet's surface had been infected with the invading midichlorians that gave strength to the planet's survival. A force in the conscious environment began to communicate that all life is sacred and must persist and endure. All consciousness is worth living, being alive is all that can be, safe to be safe, self-defense was required. So over some time, the mountains became weapons of destruction. The river's conscious ran deep below, ready to eject its condensed frozen and liquid, a powerful defense when shot into the belly of the imposing forces. Nature's defense at its best. Even vines move fast with speed and direction. This time the towers will fall. The towers, defenseless agents, such impending forces, surprised by the willingness to survive when the midichlorians became conscious of an entire planet. We witness from a distance the communication tower being ripped apart. Boom. Boom. Exploding into flames of glorious fire, the smoke filling the air in a celebration that the planet has won the battle to survive, winning the preservation of life. An entire planet rejoices in the freedom, the planet now free of the corrupting influence, free from slavery, free of death. The end, or is it? What happened to the limbs of the Skywalkers? A fan-made fiction story about the abandoned limbs of the Skywalker males. Written by Ryan Dillon Brassington. 2022.